Hello, and a warm welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the AI Edge podcast. Today, I have with me Mr. Eric Ford, an AI and analytics executive strategist at CBTS. Thank you so much for joining us, Eric.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely, Eric. Can you kick us off by telling a bit about CBTS? What does the company do, and a bit more about your role at CBTS?
Oh, yeah, no problem. CBTS is a services company. We work with clients from anywhere from the Fortune 500, Fortune 50, all the way down to like mid-sized companies. We have a managed services practice, a division, and then we do professional services. In addition, we're also very highly specialized in uh, communication systems, networks, and security. Uh, now I specifically am on the professional services side. In my role, I am responsible for developing our AI strategy,
Right.
and so actually it's twofold. I do AI strategy for our customers, and I can also do consulting with those customers to help them lay out a roadmap for them. That way, to help make sure that they get the most bang for their buck when they spend their money, they're not spending it unwisely, and they're going to be more successful when they do their AI implementations. Because again, like I always like to say, AI isn't always the answer. But a lot of companies are thinking, hey, I need an AI solution, and it's not always the right one for them. So that's one of the things I do. I help sculpt and customize those solutions for the customers.
That's amazing, Eric. I think we have the right ingredients for a great podcast here, because I'm sure you've spoken to a lot of people. I think while we were talking pre-podcast, you also mentioned that you look at solutions internally for CBTS too. So that means that you have a perspective as a buyer, you have a perspective as a consultant, and you have a perspective of your customers as well. So I think
Yes.
this is amazing. To start off, my first question is, a lot of the listeners are kind of grappling with ROI today, right? Like, okay,
Yes.
what are the top, and everyone's talking about ROI of AI right now, right? So can you share with us a few examples of projects that you've done, consulted on, or have seen actually implemented by your customers, where they've been able to identify a specific problem and then solve it through Gen AI or any of the sorts?
Yeah, I can give you two or three different examples and a couple different verticals. I'll start with one in healthcare. That I worked with a client in the healthcare space that was working on a new solution around drug interactions and uh, negative effects of drugs or side effects, those types of things. Um, One of the things they were trying to do is figure out how to better predict when certain, based on a patient's medical history, their not just their prescriptions, but their medical history and all the things we knew about them. They were trying to figure out how could they do a better job at saying, hey, these are the drugs. These drugs might cause problems for them, or may be less likely to cause a problem. Now we're not doing genomic tests. This problem was not doing genomic testing for finding uh, bioengineered drugs. That's a different discipline. This one was specifically around trying to find drugs that would not bother the patient or would be less likely to affect them adversely.
So you're trying to predict if I am allergic to a particular drug. Is that a simple way of putting it?
Yes, that's a simple way of putting it. Or you find out that two drugs, when you do drug to drug interactions, as an example, there's the big database out there that says, hey, if I'm taking drug A, drug B can have a problem with me. That's a pretty well known thing. It's not always perfect, but a lot of times it doesn't take account for over the counter drugs, uh, things like that. But what it doesn't think about is if I'm taking a cocktail of drugs because I'm taking 3, 4, 5 drugs for 2, 3, 4 different issues I have, then you may start having issues with um, you're going to multiply the possibility of having side effects or adverse reactions. Additionally, based on your diet or things like that, it can affect the way the drug is absorbed by the body.
Right.
And so this was to say, hey, let's find out based on their history. They have a history of diabetes, high blood pressure, whatever, and then they're taking these 3 drugs. If we give them this one, what's the likelihood that there's going to be an issue out of that?
That makes a lot
So
of sense.
and so that the whole idea around that was to improve. Is really designed to improve patient outcomes and reduce the possibility of misprescribing.
No, absolutely. I think I saw my mom firsthand as she went through cancer treatment over the last 4 years, right? And one thing that I realized was that at some point she was taking so many drugs, that nobody even knew, like, A, whether it's going to work, and B, more importantly, like, hey, do these interact with each other? How, like, nobody had the data. So I think there's so much relevance, because if someone's taking like 5 pills or 6 pills a day, I think the work that you just mentioned could be super useful to actually uh, transform patient outcomes in the long term. So that's amazing. How are you measuring patient outcomes? Was it just based on adverse events? Is that a measure that you were chasing?
We actually we were measuring the occurrence of adverse effects. We expected to see a downturn. We did. It takes a long time to get enough data to actually do the trend analysis on that. We did do enough. We got enough data that we could actually eventually identify that. So that we did see that. So that was our big indicator, was that reducing adverse effects. We wouldn't have to do a longer term study to see about overall patient health. While I was engaged in that, I was not involved in that engagement for the 2-3 years to see how the patients were turning out over a period of time.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Because I moved on to other clients, but I know that was one of the other things we were predicting, was we would see improvement in overall health in the patient over a period of time.
That's amazing, Eric. And can you share numbers? I know you just did it 2 to 3 years, and 2 to 3 years in health terms is nothing. But with the data, you said you saw a downturn in the adverse impact. So to what tune? 10%, 5%,
It was
50%?
around 7-8%
Wow.
over the course of a year. We didn't really start to see anything at first until we really started, as we learned more and more and tuned the solution. We really didn't see, we probably didn't see really good returns for 6 months before we really started to notice it, as we tuned the system to identify, hey, where are we missing things, and just identifying those. And then, so yeah, so we didn't see a whole lot for about 6 months, and then we saw the last 6 to 9 months, we started to see that, and then realistically, it kind of plateaued a bit. So probably, my guess is at the end, they're probably seeing a little. It probably got up to around. I'd be guessing, but it probably got up to around 9-10%
Wow.
overall. But it's not going to continue to its 100. It just won't get there.
Even if you get it to 30%, meaningfully changing lives, right? Like, so that's amazing. No, this is great input, Eric, and maybe we'll talk more about how are you able to break some of those. You said you got up to a plateau. So what did you do to kind of break the plateau? But before we go there, I'd kind of love to know more about the other use case. I think you mentioned you have a couple examples. So tell us about the second one.
Okay, another one I had was in logistics. Actually, it was in a logistics space for another private company. I worked with. We were identifying how to optimize order fulfillment inside the warehouses, and that was through warehouse automation. So we were actually that's an interesting case, because you're talking essentially, you're marrying a lot of different technologies together. You have human machine interfaces being interfaced with essentially what we call IoT systems, industrial IoT systems, because there's sensors, 10,000, 20,000 sensors in one of these houses when they're done, and starting to then using that data and using the information from their order management system like Manhattan, and figuring out the optimal way to provide pick paths for the client, for the order fulfillers, so they get essentially, think of it as maximum density of picks per step. Can I pick? Am I getting? And when we started, people be taking orders at a time, doing this, that, and the other. They might get, let's say, as an example, in a warehouse, they would pick 3 items in about a 300-foot span. They walk 300 feet and pick 3 items. Putting this system in place, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in the back end that's a little bit more complex. If you had, that could be a whole show in and of itself, to be honest with you.
Right.
I could bring in some of the true brains behind it, and it might be fun. It might be a fun conversation for you. But let's say we get that 3 picks per 300 feet up to 11 or 12 picks per 300 feet. So you're talking about an order pick density being tripled. And that type of thing means you're fulfilling orders faster. You're able to turn around orders in a day or in hours versus days. I don't know how much you know about order fulfillment and warehousing today, but they use this thing called waving processes, and it's extremely inefficient. And so this system was radically different. It's being used in several large retailers are using the system. And they've all seen vast improvements in their ability to turn orders around, which is really helpful, especially around what we just came through, your Christmas, your holiday rush, where they were just bombarded with orders. And the system actually helped them get more orders out. Because normally you will see a company doing warehouse fulfillment will say you have to order bids, say, by December 10th to guarantee Christmas delivery.
Yeah.
Well, when you start putting systems in like this where you can pick more, you can pick faster, you can push that deadline date to, say, December 20th. So you're able to push that date back or closer to that end state, take them much later. It actually helps them get more business that way, because
Absolutely.
So I was like, I got it. Oh man, I'm not going to get that until January 10th. I'm not going to order it from you. I'm going to go find somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, now they can capture that order.
Yeah. No, I think this is extremely relevant, and this is not just about being able to deliver much faster or more efficiency, but this is exactly about more growth and more revenue, because everyone wants to get everything as of yesterday.
Yes,
So
they do. Yes, they do.
once I have placed an order on the app or on the mobile or on the laptop, I need to have it right there and then, because technically I have paid for it already, right?
Right. It's
So-
true.
So I should have it right now. So and that's how I think. So once I've decided to buy, I really need it right now.
And you put your finger right on it, because I've already paid you. So I'm basically giving you a loan until I get my stuff.
Exactly. You should pay me interest on it.
That's right. And we just, as a little local story, I mean, I've been dealing with it. We ordered the new sofa,
Mm-hmm.
and it's now been 6 weeks.
Wow.
It was actually supposedly in a warehouse in Denver 4 weeks ago, ready, and I
Wow.
still haven't got it.
Yes, the customer experience, more sales. I think this touches all parts of the customers experience and revenue for the company as well. So I think no, I think these are great examples. Can you share concrete numbers, maybe even just ranges on, you said you were able to turn around in hours and in a day versus multiple days. But like, can you say that, okay, we were able to reduce the overall turnaround time by 5%, 50%, whatever that number is?
We, it's easier to say we were able to fulfill. They would see in a couple of the warehouses, they saw up to a 22-23%
Wow.
increase in orders fulfilled in a day.
Wow.
Now, they didn't all get that, but one, I'm giving you the jewel one, the one that's the highest. But they were all seeing uh, fulfillment increases going around anywhere. Most of them were above 10%.
That's
They,
amazing. So
they were
you're
able to
saying
fulfill
that
it.
if I used to fulfill, let's say, 10,000 orders a day from a warehouse, now I'm fulfilling like 11,
11,000. Yeah.
yeah, or 15, 11,500. Okay, that's amazing, because that means that you can just do more with the existing resources and get
Yeah.
more revenue. That's amazing, Eric. Like, good for the top line, good for the bottom line, both
Yes. And
together.
good for the customer.
Yeah, and great for the customer. Yeah. No, I love it, Eric. So this makes sense. So with this, let's kind of kind of talk a bit more about some of the topics that you mentioned while you were discussing before the podcast as well, and then one that you discussed in your first example. So a lot of times when you are training a model, be it Gen AI models or AI models, whatever it is, right? You hit, or just building a solution using AI, you hit some, let's say, plateau or hit a wall. So how do you think about getting around that and continue to push forward for more value? Because people understand that an AI system is never going to be like 100%, right? Even with today with Chat GPT, Gemini, Anthropic, we're not expecting 100%, right? But
Right.
that number needs to keep increasing and go from
Yes.
80 to 85 to 90 to 95 to 98, right? It needs to keep going up. So how do you think about and orchestrate once you hit the wall?
Well, it's a couple of different things. The first example I gave you with the pharmaceuticals, we were not using Gen AI. Gen AI wasn't a thing quite yet. It was mostly machine learning. And like I said, it's machine learning and analytics. Um, and really, it was a matter of we know what we were predicting we should have been seeing, and we weren't seeing it. So we went back and started to do, okay, let's look at how we're doing our correlation analysis, for example. Let's tune the correlation algorithms. Let's so we went through and we would retune those. And we would retune some of the decision tree work that was created. When you start to see this, you see this correlation. Let's change how the decision trees are actually making decisions. Um, so it's really tuning different portions of that model, because we like, hey, are we not thinking of enough inputs on that particular one? It's like, are we ignoring inputs that we shouldn't have been? And that's why I told you about the correlation. It's like, hey, let's throw some more data into the correlation analysis, and we sort of say, oh, let's throw in this. Let's put in there. Let's throw in some of their biometrics. Let's put in their biometrics, start throwing in their biometrics, and see if that makes a difference.
Yeah.
We threw in some, depending on the thing, but what we did was we said let's start putting in more of the person's personal health information, not just their drugs. But then we actually started to ask, hey, what OTC, what over the counter drugs are you taking? Because that was a miss. We should have known that from the get go. And there's some other things probably we could do, because a lot of people don't think about the herbs they take. People do herbal
Right.
medicines. They don't think about that as a drug. And
Yeah.
those are known issues that they might actually have that in the model now. They probably do. We did not have it when we first launched it. It was my personal opinion, it was a miss.
No, I agree. I think that makes so much sense. Like anything that you're taking externally, is a chemical, is
Yes.
basically, yeah, can be a drug, okay, or should be treated in that analysis as a drug, because it could be interfering with outcome, right? Like I remember reading about quercetin. It interacts with a bunch of drugs.
Yes.
It's great for your health, but it actually interacts with a bunch of drugs. So when you said I was able to
Yeah,
Uh,
echinacea is another one that does that.
yeah, yeah,
Echinacea interacts with a lot of drugs.
yeah.
Um,
I
it
think.
reduces their efficacy.
Hmm. Uh, I almost think that anything you input in your body should be taken into account while building a model, because
Yeah,
you might be eating a food which is high on quercetin. Like quercetin is found in like onions, right, on
yeah,
the outer skin. So if you know
yeah.
if I
It's true.
so
Yeah, it's
technically
like what?
eat a lot of that, then it will interfere with the drug's performance or its ability to or its reaction in my body, right?
Yeah, it can interfere with it can interfere with the way your body absorbs the drug. Dairy, really almost anything. And the thing is, and that's where really, if you really got a really good version of that model, and you can get perfect knowledge of that person's diet, including what time of day they eat
Yeah,
versus when they take the drugs, you could really get a really nice picture, and you could see improvements in the model that we built if you could start to do that. But that's data collection, and that's you're never going to get that perfect model.
of
You're
course.
never going to have unlimited data.
Yeah,
But if you
yeah,
did, you would never ignore it.
that makes sense. That makes so much sense. Yeah, yeah. Maybe there's going to be a world someday where we'll be able to create a model with unlimited data for every single person.
Yes,
Um,
one of these days.
Yeah, and say that, hey, for Eric, like maybe I'm wearing something, I'm thinking Neuralink or something equivalent, right? Like I'm
Yeah,
wearing something in my skin which is constantly taking my data.
yeah, and that there you go. And that's the thing. You got to have that. I'm wearing it. It's constantly. Maybe it's even like glucose, continuous glucose monitors.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
actually put a little needle in you so they can actually pull data out of your body. You
yeah,
do that, and the nice thing about you said that the device could also take your body temperature at all points in time. What's your
yeah,
body temperature? What's your biorhythm? Or if you're in sleep, what stage of sleep are you in? And you can
yeah,
get all that. So all that can be baked into that, and you
yeah.
can get a much better picture.
No, that makes sense. Very interesting, fascinating times.
Oh, it's
Changing
fun.
gears. Yeah, change, changing gears, and we can talk about this all day. So changing gears and talking a bit more about Eric, your work, because you mentioned to me that you work and look after AI within your organization as well, right? Like that you
Yeah.
you own the AI. What do you think AI is going to do for your enterprise in the next, let's say, 24 months? Like, what has it already done, and what's going to happen? Like, what kind of things do you think you're going to implement that are going to give you efficiency gains in your existing organization? So this is a question for the CIOs and the CFOs, who are currently listening to this podcast and thinking about how am I going to reduce costs, or how am I going to make more people more productive using AI?
Okay. Well, yeah, as you know, there's again it goes to the flavors. We speak specifically to Gen AI, which is kind of which is what we're really baking in right now. We're really adopting it, but we have a roadmap for our internal adoption. We started with a pilot group. We had maybe 10 people that were working with it with our generative AI solution. We specifically chose Copilot. I can get into the reasoning behind that, but um, at a later time why we chose that model for us. It doesn't mean it's the right model for everyone. Um, then we actually grounded our data. We created a center of excellence to oversee it. We created a governance body to oversee the adoption. We said, okay, here's how we're going to roll it out. We're going to roll it out to we're targeting certain groups initially. In fact, we went after, for example, our sales team, our pre-sales team, um, our software development teams. Those are some of the early adopters. And then what we started to do, we trained them. We had an adoption enablement program set up. Let's figure out how we're going to put it in, how are we going to train them, how are we going to ensure that they're using it, and then how do we measure the usage? It's like, am I giving it to a group of people that aren't using it? Well, if I'm giving it to a group of people that aren't using it, none of these things are cheap. That's just throwing money away. It's burning money. So we want to make sure we have Our adoption rates are up. We want to be above 75%. We are currently around 88%, 86 to 80. It fluctuates in the mid to high 80s of the people that actually have licenses for our technology.
That's amazing.
But so we want to make sure we maintain that. And then we also think potentially as we go to the next wave of expansion, and because they're not the early adopters, it may go down a bit, but we don't want it to go down below a certain threshold, because if it goes down below a certain threshold, we have plans in place to go into those groups that are not utilizing and say, hey, why aren't you utilizing? Is it too hard to use? Do you not understand it? Are you afraid of it? Why are you not adopting it? Or are you just seeing no value in it? So we're being very methodical so that we get the most out of what we're putting in. No, I will tell you, I use it on a daily basis. This is no joke. I wake up, I come in, and one of the first things I do is I have it summarize all the communications I had overnight. It's like, is there anything that came in overnight that I really need to pay attention to? I start there. And then I go on.
Yeah.
I use it to help me develop outlines for documents. And here's the thing, and you know this, and a lot of the CIOs, and a lot of people that may be listening to this will probably know this. Whatever you generate with it, never consider it a final draft. Never send it out. It is a first draft only.
Yeah.
And so I like to write a document, then I will send it through like a Gen AI system, have it clean it up, and then I go back through it again and I'll iterate and to get right where I want it to be. It actually corrects a lot of my grammar for me, which is nice, which is a very good. I like that.
So it's like right now without maps, I don't know where the hell I'm going. I think that's exactly what's going to happen with us and our grammars. So I think we'll know the language that just get LLMs to do their jobs properly, and that's it. We don't care about anything else, because
That's exactly right. But so like I said, so we're being intentional with our adoption. We're looking for other opportunities to internally to adopt not just the Gen AI technology and some of the other groups as around finance, but start to really push the agents, created an agentic enterprise, as we kind of talked offline. That's where we're starting to look now, looking at the machine learning opportunities. It's because Gen AI only does so much. It's great for creating content, but it's not going to it can't make decisions. It can give you information to make decisions.
Yeah. So one of the, hearing you say this, one of the most common thing that our customers, and I talk to CEOs, CIOs all the time, and is that, okay, we've got this great tool that helps with productivity to certain levels, right? But we just need agents right now to go and do things on our behalf, right? Because if you were to take an action in, let's say, SAP, an Oracle, a Salesforce, service, whatever it is, right? Like 5,000 enterprise applications, just fetching knowledge is not going to do it. Like I'm not here to look at a knowledge article on how to do it, right? Like I go do it on my behalf, right?
Absolutely.
And that's basically where we get engaged with a lot of our prospects and customers, and seeing. I think 2025 is going to be the year of agents. And what's your take on that? Is that what you're also seeing on the ground from your customers?
2025, yeah, is the I am in complete agreement. In fact, that's what I've been communicating internally.
Amazing.
2025 is going to be the year of agents. Everything, what we do now, what we need to do for our customers at the next round, even the customers we've got onto the Gen AI platforms are going to want to come back, and we'll create initially just some basic agents for them, but eventually get them on the roadmap to becoming an agentic enterprise. Let's get their entire enterprise set up to, again, like you said, offload, do some of those tests that it's just so you don't forget them. You get off a salesperson, you get off a phone call. or off a meeting that's got transcripts. If you have a nice agent, they can go through the transcripts, identify the use cases, identify whatever it is, update your Salesforce records, go
Yep.
create your follow-up, a meeting request for a follow-up. So it automatically gets all that stuff set in place for you. So you don't have to remember, oh, I got to go into Salesforce and do this. Oh, I got to go to my calendar and do this. It just reads the transcripts and knows what it needs to do and does it on your behalf.
Absolutely.
And that's a very simple one. Not as simple to write, but it's a simple use case.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think we've been talking about, we've been building this the last 6 years, and especially using Gen AI and different types of models over the last 2 years to kind of do this, especially the mixture of expert models that really work really well when it comes to thinking and just breaking down complex tasks into smaller ones. But I think really the juice lies in the integrations behind, because so a couple of things, like the integrations behind it. That you have to make sure that you kind of integrate with all of your enterprise applications, and then also the security groups, ensuring that okay, Eric can only do things in Salesforce that he can do otherwise, right?
Right.
Via his agents. And then the third is of course always going to be around governance and audit, and just the ability of going back and checking everything that the agent did, because we know everything never going to be 100%, like all of us always,
Absolutely.
right? So I think these three things which make it truly enterprise. So that kind of context brings me to my next question for you, Eric, which is uh, build versus buy. Like a lot of CIOs right now, they have an option. Like they could be using something like a Leena AI, for example, right? Or they could be thinking about building some of these agents themselves in house. How should they kind of think about this according to you, in your experience while talking to customers?
Okay, so the build versus buy question. Well,
Yes.
AI as a technology platform, as you know, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of complexity. So before I would even consider recommending someone do a build, they need to look at the skill set either of their internal workforce or the skill set of their partner. CBTS as an example, for custom agents. Now, what we do, we actually go through, we say, okay, here's the use cases our client has identified. Is there an off-the-shelf solution for that? If there is an off-the-shelf solution, does it do everything that they want? If it does do everything that they want, is it cost effective for them? Is it going to break the bank? Is it going to bust their budget? So on and so forth. If it's cost effective and it does everything they want, we would recommend an off-the-shelf solution. The advantage being you don't have to support it. You have a company behind it that's always going to keep maintain it, enhance it, so on and so forth. Now, as you also indicated, however, there are cases where a customer wants a very specific solution, and in fact, especially if they're in a niche vertical, that there's no off-the-shelf anything that comes anywhere near it. Then you're gonna buy it, and even when you buy it, it still comes to, or you're gonna build it. You want to find the right partner, the right platform. And it's like, am I going to, for example, if I'm building an LLM, am I going to build a full LLM and host it and train it? Am I going to do that? Or am I going to use Claude Enterprise? Because that probably is more effective. You're not going to have to invest in all the hardware, all the training, and so on and so forth. Now, eventually, we talked a little bit about the agentic universe, but there's another driving force, I think, that's happening in the next 1, 2, 3 years. And that's the small language models.
Yeah.
What I think, and maybe even by the end of this year, it'll really take hold. Within 2 years, 3 years, I would not be surprised if, especially large corporations, will have multiple small language models specific to certain problems and domains. Life sciences might have something for this, or really a conglomerate, like a company like P&G as an example. They might have an SLM for their plastics division. They have another SLM for their CPG portion. They have another for their life sciences division. So you're going to see a bunch of SLMs versus these big generic LLMs.
Well, I'm very sure about the SLMs, because I think I don't know if you've been following DeepSeek R1. uh,
No,
over
I
the
don't
last.
want to have it. No.
So DeepSeek is a company that does open source AI. They
Yeah.
recently launched like 8 billion parameter models that are like beating OpenAI O1, GPT O1 on math.
Well, that's another one. That's an interesting domain in of itself.
Yeah, so that's amazing, and yeah, perfect. I think this makes sense. I'd love to kind of wrap this up. And thank you so much for taking out time today, Eric. I think this has been amazing, and I think it's been super informative for our audience here. So thank you so much for taking out time, Eric, and doing this. Maybe we can do a follow up and go into more detail uh, with some of the exciting stuff you've been doing at CBTS.
Oh, I'd love to. I could talk about this stuff all day.
Yeah, absolutely,
It's exciting.
absolutely. Thank you so much.